We have just one item from Alex. Alex, would you share the screen and start?
Wow. You should see proposal now. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so the proposal is related to custom attributes in GraphQL, specifically like EAV attributes. And the problem is that in some Magento installations, you may have tens of thousands of EAV attributes, and those attributes usually belong to thousands of attribute sets. And just to clarify, so attribute set is representation of specific product type. So let's say t-shirt will have one attribute set, shoes will have different attribute set, and if store is selling thousands of different product types, and it's possible that there will be tens of thousands of EV attributes defined by merchant in the store. And the problem is when we try to search products in catalog, we do not know in advance what attribute sets those products will belong to. So when you search for, let's say, red products or some other keyword, you never know what kind of product will be presented in results. And also, as you may know, GraphQL doesn't support like get all fields types of queries like it is in REST. In REST, it is pretty common to say, give me all product fields. In GraphQL, this is kind of anti-pattern and it is not supported. So you have to explicitly list all fields in the query, the fields which you need to render eventually. And this is a problem for us because since we don't know in advance what fields we need, because we don't know what attribute sets will be like in response, you have to list all possible fields in the system to be able to render, let's say, all applicable EV attributes for search results. And as you can see, in case of tens of thousands of attributes, you will get a query which will have to list all those attributes, and it will be pretty heavy on bandwidth, and query size will be huge in this case. And by the way, so I didn't mention like how can you get all those 10,000s of attributes if they're dynamic. You can use introspection on product interface. Since currently we list all EV attributes in flag structure in product interface, you can get a list via introspection. But as I say, like it is not solving the issue completely because query size will be huge in this case. So proposed solution is to introduce container called custom attributes, and it will contain array of attributes. Each attribute will have code and string value. String value is actually JSON encoded value of custom attribute. So in case of actual attribute value being of type string, you will just get string because JSON encoded string is a string. In case of array, you will get just JSON encoded array. It's also possible that there could be some objects. I don't believe we have any EV attributes as objects by default, but it's possible that somebody will create custom attributes represented as an object, and it should also be supported without any modifications to the schema. So flat representation of custom attributes in product interface, category, customer, or other AV entities will remain intact for now. So you will be able to query all attributes, all custom attributes using container, or you can explicitly list all necessary fields. And in this case, you will get type check by schema, and it is just better for performance. And it's necessary to keep in mind that querying all attributes, like with this container, may have performance impact, and that's why basically GraphQL does not recommend having get all data by default. So this is a proposed solution, and also some alternatives which were considered. One is persisted queries, which is not implemented yet, but we have task for it. And persisted query basically, there are like two different varieties. One is server-side persisted queries, which are defined by admin and serve as whitelist of allowed queries for this specific GraphQL API. So client will have to know hashes which map to specific queries, and then client sends hash, and server identifies what query was expected to be executed and execute this query. This type of persisted queries solve those attacks threats, and basically it potentially prevents execution of heavy queries, because admin of the site decides what queries are allowed on the specific Magento instance. Second type of persisted queries is client-side persisted queries. This is when client sends query initially to the server, and server gives the client hash for this query. So server persists client-defined query and just generates some hash. And on subsequent queries, client will not send the whole query; it will send hash. As we can see, for the problem described here, the main issue is that the client has to send huge query listing tens of thousands of attributes, and in case of client-side persisted queries, we can avoid this for all subsequent requests. So it will still be a problem for the first request, but for all subsequent queries, the actual request will be replaced with the hash. Additionally, to improve flexibility and allow support for complex structures or custom attributes, we can introduce type, like over here. So it will be custom attribute and then field called type. And it's possible to give some hint to the client how exactly to decode the value received in here. So if we want to support some objects or other complex types, it's possible to extend the schema. For now, I don't think we should do it. Probably we can extend it later if we have some valid use cases for it. Additionally, value of custom attribute like this value can have more strict type, so it can be not string, it can be, let's say, union or some other type. Again, it's possible to consider this later, but if somebody has use cases which definitely require more strict type here, we can consider it. And the last option which we had was to eliminate flat structure listing all custom attributes under product interface directly and other AV entities, and completely rely on the containers. For now, we believe that this will cause dev experience degradation, and that's why we do not want to go this route. And we also don't see how will it give any benefit for production deployments, because if you do not query those fields, they will not be fetched. So basically, whoever needs containers, they will use container. Whoever needs specific fields, strictly defined fields, they will use those fields. So any questions on the proposal?
So for custom attributes, we want to return all attributes.
Yeah, so there is actually no way for you to specify what attributes you want to return, and actually it doesn't make sense, because if you know what attributes you need, you can query them directly. And this case is for client which needs to render all applicable AV attributes on I don't know, product page or potentially on category listing page. So the answer is there will be no filters. So you get all applicable attributes. Yeah, sorry.
Currently in Magento admin, you can specify that this attribute is visible on storefront. So maybe it makes
that's
sense
correct.
to return
So
only this
only
attribute.
yeah, that's correct. So for now, only attributes which are rendered on storefront are visible in GraphQL, and it will remain the same. But I thought you mean to get subset of applicable attributes for products. So that will not be supported for now. So we are not going to provide any filter. So one of the options could be to have filter over here. So we can provide arguments for custom attributes and say, give me just color. But again, as I say, it doesn't make sense because you have access to color by querying the color field directly. So if we decide to eliminate flat structure for attributes, then it's possible that it will make sense to have some filter over here. But for now, since we do not remove flat structure, I don't see why would it make sense.
And why the name is like custom attributes, not just attributes?
Actually, this is a good question. It's probably coming just from how we name it internally. I believe it's even better to name it somehow like dynamic attributes, or we can come up with better name. It's a good point. Because we are creating this API for third parties.
One more name for attributes.
Yeah, actually, you're welcome to give your suggestion in this proposal. And you can say whether it might use some potentially better naming for client, or it's better to keep existing naming convention, system series implementation. So in REST APIs, as far as I remember, we have custom attributes.
Yeah, but in REST API, we return only not EAV and not system attributes in custom attributes. So it's
do return EAV attribute.
Yeah, and REST return EAV in custom attributes container. It is basically the same.
Okay.
So I guess then it doesn't make sense to rename it if it's the same in REST or similar.
Yeah, maybe. But again, feel free to leave your comments on this.
Does it make sense to introduce a new scalar type for values?
Yeah, so that was one of options which we may consider introduce more strict type. So if you have specific proposal, Anton, you can just leave a comment and we can consider. So I personally believe JSON encoded is good enough, but yeah.
Yeah, would it make sense to add type as it mentioned? Like, are you sure that JSON is enough?
JSON definitely is enough, but this is too broad. But looks like that we don't have other good solution here.
So what Olga is talking about is this statement, which I added here as well, and alternatives considered. We can actually talk to our PWA team and AAM team, who will be the first clients of this, and see if they need type. I just don't want to introduce fields if we don't actually need them, and it's much easier to introduce new fields later than to deprecate it and remove it if you don't need it.
Agree.
It should be pretty easy to introduce this type, yeah.
Will you be talking to PWA team or?
Yeah, I suppose we will definitely show them. So I just wrote this proposal like half an hour ago, so we will show it to those teams and get their feedback.
Okay. could you add a real scenario? Like you describe in general, but because I understand you're trying to solve the problem for product page, right? Probably for product listing, it's not applicable. In product listing, client will always. Do you think they will be requesting all attributes and showing?
No. Actually, the problem here is that you don't know exact attribute sets of products that will be returned by a search. As a result, you cannot predict which columns you have to request from products query. Here is the problem.
Oh, but you know what you want to show. You want to show title, price, image.
Actually, you don't. You can specify a EAV attribute to be shown in catalog listing.
In catalog listing. Okay, so
Yeah.
but there is this information is not present in the return result. Like if somebody for product listing gets 1,000 attributes, what is he going to do with it, with this information? You're not going to display all of them, right?
Can you clarify your question?
They can do actually something like collapsible representation when it's not displayed by default, but if you just go and click on specific product in the listing, the set of attributes will.
No, but it will be product page, kind of. It will be kind of.
Actually, it's definitely for catalog page, a category page, because so for example, you have on page 10 products and 10 different attribute set.
Mm-hmm.
To get all attribute like needed to display on category page for all of this attribute, you need to request it, even if all of this product have only one attribute to show.
Yeah, but my question is, how do you filter it? Is it possible to filter in the
main idea to not filter it, because you already filtered, but display it on storefront.
But display on storefront is not the same that you want to display in the listing. You can have 20 fields. Do you want to show them in the listing? You probably want to show them in the product page.
You have
admin decide. If admin decide to show all 100 attributes, we will show it. But it's
on the listing.
No reason to configure Magento in this way.
Yes, I mean, so there is a setting. I just don't remember. There is a setting to configure this attribute in the listing, right?
Yes.
And it is possible to make the query, the GraphQL query, to get only those ones. So I want to distinguish listing and product page, because for product page you can show 20 fields and it's fine. For listing, I don't think you need.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The problem here is that you don't know which attributes you have to request. In the same time, we definitely know that our products, as usual, do not have so many attributes. So we are pretty safe. We will not return millions of attributes per each product. In the same time, examples that Andrei mentioned, you cannot predict attribute set of products that will be returned by your search. So let's keep everything straightforward and have exactly the same query and exactly the same behavior for listing and PGP. From my standpoint, it has a perfect sense.
But it's different. Like you don't want to show a lot of them in one place, and you want to show all of them in another place.
Yeah, and this is the responsibility of renderer.
And how renderer knows?
Renderer has to request metadata, but it is okay to request metadata. As for me, this is not okay to have dynamic queries, because
but I'm asking how. So I'm asking how client will look like. So that's my request
client
for this
on
proposal.
On product page, there are no such problem. Because if you
No,
know
for product page
exact,
it's clear. For
exact,
listing, I'm saying.
so for it's this functionality, especially for listing, where this problem exists. It's not for product page. For product page, you always can just request all attributes filter in the way you want, and for one product, show it this attributes in the way you want.
But
It's easy to do.
this proposal is saying about returning all attributes, which
So
makes sense.
I believe what Olga is saying, that if we apply more strict rules for attributes, like to pay attention to this flag using product listing, if we use it by default, means that for product page, which is going to use the same query, you will not get all attributes, correct? So you will get restricted by that use in product listing. There are actually two ways how to resolve it. One is to use metadata, separate metadata service, as Anton mentioned. And second option is to include metadata in response for attributes. We can also consider that option. Some vital metadata.
In general, I think just to make the proposal more clear, it would be good if you could describe specific scenarios that you want to cover here. So like product listing, problem product page, right? And maybe at least on high level how the client, like what scenario will look like in the client.
Yeah, and statements that we don't want to show all attribute only with options to show on storefront.
Yeah.
I suppose not only show on storefront, but looks like we also need some metadata, right? To differentiate between category page and product page. So what do you think about including metadata into response directly? Do you think it makes sense, or
attributes
metadata about whether to show it in product listing, for example?
I disagree with this actually, because with attributes metadata, you always can cache this data, because we know that this is not something that can be changed frequently. In case we will move this data into this container, we will lose this possibility, and we always will have to perform some logic to retrieve attributes metadata. In the same time, it will increase the size of response significantly, because with each attribute we will have to return some flags.
Yeah, I agree. And we also had separate discussions for, let's say, advanced search. So we need to figure out what fields should be rendered on advanced search page, and we also need some kind of metadata query which will allow to return all applicable fields. So we might have one query over there, and then we can probably have another query for getting attributes applicable for product listing page.
Yeah, I agree that we definitely need some additional service to retrieve information about attribute if we don't have.
So we have a service, but the current service requires you to list all attributes which you need metadata about. So there is no service which gives you, let's say, list of attributes applicable for advanced search. So you cannot do that at the moment. It is a gap in coverage. So it should be added. And also, as I say, like we can add another query for getting all attributes applicable for product listing. Then we can cache result, and we can build category page based on that metadata and response of this custom attributes container.
Okay, but when you say attribute, you mean attribute entity or value of attribute for product?
Attribute entity.
In attribute metadata, it is actual metadata. It's not value. It's metadata, properties of attributes. And here, obviously, it is actual value. Okay, so I will add more use cases. I will probably also have to describe those additional metadata endpoints, how they will work together with this custom attributes container. Make sense?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yep.
So probably then that's it. And feel free to leave any comments in this proposal. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I added some notes to the meeting minutes. You can double check them if you need. And I guess that's all, unless somebody has any topic. We don't have any topics listed.
Actually, I have one. This is changes to product pricing schema. Such changes were already approved by product owner, but let's do final review to make sure that everything is taken into account.
Okay. Can you share it?
Yes. Give me a second. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, I believe we had such discussion in the past, but this is just a final summary of what we discussed earlier. So instead of having one single price for a product interface, which is a storefront representation of products, we are going to introduce a price range. Price range, this is price range. Okay. This is two values. This is obviously range between a minimal value of product and maximum value of product prices. Because we need only this information to show it on storefront. Minimum and maximum price is particular examples of Magento price, which is pretty similar to what we have right now, with a regular price, final price, discounts, and fixed product taxes. The main difference with an existing representation of product taxes, this is absence of adjustments. We discussed this question with Andrew consultant, architect, and product owner, and we agree that for all cases, as we know in our system, we never want to really show such information. In case if merchant set up, if merchant has set up to include prices, they will be automatically included. In case if it excludes, as this works from the United States, they will be excluded. The only adjustments that we have to show with product price, this is fixed product taxes, which we and we like taxes. Because our current implementation allows you to set up several fixed product taxes. This is array of amounts with a label, where label is a label of attribute which represents particular fixed product tax. So as you may see, we deprecated old price, we deprecated price adjustments, as well as enums and for price adjustments. Additional reason for this, that right now we are seeing that significant number of our merchants are using other languages than PHP, and as usual, they generate some object representation of our interfaces. As a result, all our dynamic dynamic enums are pretty problematic for them to support, because they have to regenerate regenerate objects each time when we, for instance, edit an attribute, which will add a new fixed product tax. But this is exactly the same problem that Alex described several minutes ago with custom attributes, I believe. Additional improvements that we have here, discounts. We are returning information about discount. As a result, we do not force storefront application to perform such calculation. So product discount returns two values: percent of discount and real amount. So rendering of price should be even more straightforward than it is right now. Guys, do you have any questions?
Yes.
It's good.
So there is this taxes, fixed product tax. Maybe it should be taxes. Right.
This is exactly fixed product taxes, because, as I mentioned before, we don't want to show real taxes separately, because our application doesn't show them separately. And this is a product decision to do not show them.
What do you mean? What I'm saying is that it should be plural, maybe.
It's not plural.
Because it's an array. Yes, it is tax. It should be taxes.
Okay. Fix it. Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so we deprecate price field, instead we have price range. We deprecate tier price field, instead we have tier prices. Okay, but did you go through tier prices? Tier prices.
Tier price. Tier price has a limited number of changes. Actually, this is an array of final price, which is exactly the same as final price of a product. Also, it has a quantity and a discount as well, to provide a possibility to render differences between regular prices and final.
Okay, but first there is product tier prices container. It has customer group ID, QTI, value. Okay, we have it's deprecated one. Okay,
yeah.
But why? Okay. And now it's in price tiers. Okay, got it. So we have tier price, and tier price is both deprecated, and we introduce price tiers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Names are getting to the end. Like, it's hard to find the name, I see. Okay. Okay.
Do you have other question, guys?
Looks like no questions, right?
Okay, in this case, I believe we can merge it. I believe this pull request was here for a while, so all.
Yeah, just simply, guys, to update this tax to taxes, fixed product taxes.
Sure. I will do. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's all for today then, or anybody has anything else? Okay, then that's all. That's it. I'm stopping recording and see you next time.